Well, welcome to VCOP, Vegan Convergence of the Peoples, number 15. I'm Rebecca B.J. Allen, and I have the honor of introducing to everyone Geoff Palmer. Geoff Palmer is a 60-year-old, as he says in his bio, 38-year vegan, which is amazing. He's a natural bodybuilder, natural physique master champion, owner of the Clean Machine plant-based fitness nutrition, author, national lecturer, vegan patent holder, and two-time winner, one of NEXTY Winner for Best Supplement of the Year. Fantastic. And also, he was selected to be one of the top 100 most influential vegans by Plant-Based News. So what an honor it is and a pleasure, and we look forward to hearing from you. So let's see. I'll go ahead and get the PowerPoint ready or the thing ready. Okay, just a moment.
While she's bringing up the PowerPoint, yes, in 38 years of vegan, I became vegan back in 1985. I didn't even know the word vegan back then. Somebody actually told me about a year after I had become vegan. So I was like, hey, there's a word for it. Cool. But I did it because someone helped me through severe suicidal depression. And when I had such an amazing breakthrough, I felt so thankful and so grateful for someone saving my life. I said, how can I, contribute to less suffering in the world? And in meditation, it came to me, just stop harming the animals. So I quit smoking, I quit drinking, I quit doing all drugs, and I quit eating all animal products that day. I dedicated the rest of my life to helping animals and to helping other people have breakthroughs of their own. And I searched for different ways that I could communicate this. And obviously my experience was not as familiar to other people. So I chose a diet and exercise. These are definitely things that almost everybody does in their normal everyday lives and things that they can enjoy. And if I felt if I could get them to shift their diet and their exercise enough, they would feel a difference, something that they could really say, wow, I feel better. What can I do more? How can I do more? And I thought this was probably one of the most powerful ways that I could contribute. Obviously, in physical fitness, I was a AAU Olympic swimmer when I was in high school and college, and loved physical fitness. And I wanted to look at nutrition. So I went in to start my doctorate degree to become a doctor, and loved biology and physiology, fascinated by the research and learning how things worked. But I realized it was mostly almost all about drugs. And I did not want to be a drug pusher. So after a couple of years getting my biology degree, I said, no, I'm going to take this in a different direction. I want to give people real health and real nutrition. Now, obviously, the first thing that people ask me is, where do you get your protein, right? Being a bodybuilder. And I think now the research out there is very, very clear that we get all of our essential amino acids from plants. Animals do not make essential amino acids. They are all made by plants. Bacteria make some too as well, but we don't sit down to a bowl full of bacteria in the morning for breakfast. We eat plants, and so do the animals that we eat. They get their essential amino acids from plants as well. So all essential amino acids come from plants. So the protein myth is kind of blown up. We still got some work to do there. But I looked at the amount of animals that were suffering and dying, and by far one group of animals was and still is taking the biggest brunt of suffering, and that is fish, our sea life. The 92 billion animals, land animals, that are killed is horrific, but 2.7 trillion sea life are killed every single year for human food. They are basically waterboarded. We breathe oxygen with a little bit of water vapor in it, and they breathe water with a little bit of dissolved oxygen in it. When we are forced to inhale water, it's called waterboarding. It is the most severe form of torture there is for a human to experience. And fish, when you take them out of water, they have to breathe in too much oxygen and it burns their gills. It inflames them just like they're being waterboarded. So essentially, we are waterboarding to death 2.7 trillion species of life in our oceans every single year. So I said, all right, we've got to change the narrative on this, because people still believe, where do you get your omega-3? It's got to come from fish. Well, we've wiped out over 50% of all marine life in the oceans already. 76% of freshwater wildlife is gone in just the last 40 years. Fish oil industries, which are hanging their hats on this essential fatty acids called EPA and DHA, or you got to get them from fish because vegans and plants don't supply it for you. This is a myth. This is a marketing myth that was devised to sell $22.5 billion worth of fish oil and get people to consume fish, one of the most consumed animals, the most group of consumed animals on the planet. As you can see, we're harvesting fish in god-awful numbers, and we're literally wiping fish out. Some estimates put 10 to 20 years before we actually cause the complete collapse of all life in the ocean. And some people say to me, well, what's the big deal? We run out of fish, we just won't eat fish anymore. No, it's a huge deal, because there's a balance between the fish that live there and the algae that live there too. The phytoplankton. So the fish eat the algae, or the green plants there, the algae, and that keeps them in balance. When you wipe away the fish, the algae will overbloom. And when they die, they pull the oxygen out of the water, leaving dead zones. We already have dead zones all over the world in our oceans. And when we do this, we wipe out not only the fish, but we'll wipe out the plant life in the ocean. Now, that becomes a problem, because 70% of the oxygen that you and I are breathing right now at this moment comes from phytoplankton in the water. So if we wipe out the fish, we'll wipe out the phytoplankton, which will wipe out most of life on this planet. And we are 10 to 20 years away from that, a global extension of it. So we have to change the narrative on it. Next slide, please. Or can I move the slides, or is it? BJ, you have to move the slide for me, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so one, fish do not make essential omegas, just like animals do not make essential essential amino acids. Plants are the only ones that do this. Now, in the water and the aqua, algae actually supplies all the essential fats. So on land, plants are the only ones that supply essential omegas for humans and herbivores. And there's only one essential omega-3, and that is ALA, and it is only made by plants. So animals, human beings can't make essential omega-3s. No animal can. That's why actually we call them essential omega-3s and essential omega-6s, is because we have to. It's essential that we get them from our diet. That means something else is making it, because our body can't. Now, EPA and DHA are not essential omega-3s, but everybody, when I go to classes and I teach lectures all over the country, I ask, what are the two essential omega-3s? And almost everyone says EPA and DHA, and they're not even essential. Our body makes its own EPA and DHA. All herbivore animals do this, including humans. Carnivores actually do not convert ALA at all, so they can't even use it. Carnivores and fish actually have to start with EPA, so they start at the third tier down. So over on the left, you see the conversion. Now, what's interesting about this is a unidirectional conversion, meaning it only goes one way. So if you consume ALA, it can convert into all 5 of the other forms of essential omega-3s. That is a good thing. But if you take EPA, you're not getting any of the first 3 omegas that our body uses. Next slide, please, BJ. Okay, but the big question was, when we do blood draws and we look in our blood draws and we see how much ALA is converting all the way down to the bottom tier, which is DHA, the research was saying, oh, look, there's only about 1% of ALA converting to DHA. So this means humans don't convert enough ALA to DHA to supply our brains, the main organ using DHA. Well, we now know this is false. And for far too long, including today, even some plant-based doctors still believe this, even with the research that's available today, that you have to consume preformed DHA. That is something formed outside of the body, like what we see in algae or what we see in fish or other animal sources. And the fact is, we were looking in the wrong place the whole time. We now know through recent research that's going to be published in the 4th quarter of this year that we have measured the amount of DHA conversion, and that conversion is not happening in the blood. Okay, so why were we basing all of this on blood studies? So the omega-3 index that says how much DHA is present in the blood. Well, the body does not want to convert ALA to DHA in the blood because it can elevate LDL cholesterol, which could then in turn lead to atherosclerosis, the #1 cause of death. So the body would never want to naturally do this. So we now know through this new carbon isotope method that the measures of the DHA, which were originally measured in the blood, were only 1%. It's because they were measuring it in the wrong place. When they measured it in the total body, they found that DHA synthesis was 50 times higher than what was found in the blood. So we now know that ALA is actually mostly taken up by the blood, a little bit converted to DHA just for immediate purposes. And then the rest of it is stored in our adipose or fat tissues in our body cells, fat tissues around the heart, the liver, and fat tissues in the brain. So about 60 to 70% is either burned up and used for energy or stored as in fat. Next slide, please. So here you can see how much DHA does the brain actually need? Well, in this study cited at the top there, the brain DHA requirement is about 2.4 to 3.8 milligrams per day in humans. So how much DHA is actually stored in the body? They found that adipose fat contains about 20,000 to 50,000 milligrams of DHA in an adult human being. That's 2 to 3 decades worth of stored DHA. So there is absolutely no reason the body should need to consume outside sources of DHA. As a vegan, I knew this had to be true. I knew they had to be wrong about this, but all the blood studies were saying vegans aren't converting enough ALA to DHA. It's because it's not converting in the blood. It's converting in our fat tissues. You'd actually have to measure that. They finally come up with this carbon radioisotope method to finally find the source. Otherwise, the only way you could test that is to go in and take a chunk out of people's brains and hearts and stuff like that to measure the amount of DHA. And that's just not a realistic way to approach things. Okay, next slide, BJ. Okay, so if this is a unidirectional conversion, and if we start with plant ALA, we can get all 6 forms that our body needs. But if you start with EPA, which is found in animal foods like fish or meat, or even algae, if you're taking an algae supplement, you're only starting with EPA. So are those first 3, ALA, SDA, and ETA, important? Do the body use them at all? The answer is an emphatic yes. So this was a wonderful study that actually showed those who had the highest rates of ALA, SDA, and ETA, the first three highlighted there in blue on the left, was linked to greater fluid intelligence. They were smarter and had total gray matter volume that was larger. So it actually protects the brain from shrinking with age. Now, this is a wonderful thing. I don't know about you. I like being smarter and protecting and preserving more of my brain as I age. But this only happens with higher amounts of ALA, SDA, and ETA, which you cannot get from any animal product. There is none in any animal product, not fish, not algae, or any animal food whatsoever. So this only comes from plants. So we've totally reversed with the science this idea that you would be somehow deficient by eating plants, when the truth is just the opposite. By eating animals, you are deficient in the top 3 omegas that the body needs for protecting and preserving and increasing intelligence in the brain. So just the opposite is the truth of what is being sold out there for all those people pushing fish oil and all those people fear-mongering people into believing, hey, look at the blood test. If you're not consuming preformed DHA like from fish or algae, it's not going to show up in your bloodstream. So those blood tests were scaring vegans, saying, oh, I must be too low in DHA. No, you're not. It's because it's measuring it in the blood, and that is not where the conversion is happening. It's taking place inside your tissues. And now we have the science that proves that to be true. And not only are you converting 50 times more that's in the bloodstream, but you're storing up to 20 to 30 years worth of DHA. So there's no reason to be taking algae DHA. And as a matter of fact, next slide, it may be detrimental to take these downstream metabolites. Okay, so I'll explain that first. All right, but before we get to that, one common thing is people will say, but wait a minute, I am in a few percent of the population has this genetic variant where I don't produce enough of the enzyme that converts ALA. I'm sorry? Oh, so there is a genetic variant that says that gets people to not produce as much ALA conversion enzyme, and that's called delta-6 desaturase. I know this is a little bit sciencey, but I'll explain it in real simple terms. So the very first step, there's an enzyme called D6D or delta-6 desaturase. That's the one that converts ALA into steariodonic acid, SDA, and then the rest of it, the challenge this has. It's called the rate-limiting enzyme, because if you don't produce enough of that enzyme, you don't get as much of the rest of the forms like EPA and DHA. So there are a few percentage of the population that does have this issue. It's not that they don't produce this enzyme at all, so they produce it in low amounts. We're not quite sure why that is yet, but the good news is that we have something to help with that specifically. Next slide, please. Oops, BJ, you still with us? Yeah, okay, cool. And that plant is Ahiflower. It is the richest source of SDA. Now, why is SDA important? Probably many of you, most of you have probably never even heard of SDA. SDA is that second tier there that actually, if the plant allows you to have SDA, then you can skip that first step. This makes it easy for anybody, even with a genetic variant, to get everything they need from a plant source. You do not have to go to a preformed EPA from algae or from fish oil. Next slide. So Ahiflower is the richest source of SDA of any plant on the planet by far. And you can see how it compares. Flax and chia don't have any SDA in it at all. So flax and chia would not be very helpful to any person that has that genetic variant in them. And how do you know if you have that genetic variant? Well, you can get genetically tested, or you can just take some plant sources of SDA. Hemp does have a little bit of SDA, but Ahiflower has about 8 times as much SDA as hemp does. Ahiflower won the NEXTY Award for the best supplement of the year. And I was very proud to work with the researchers even before they launched, and was the very first person to bring Ahiflower to market, because I care about people getting the best natural source of SDA on the planet. Next slide. So the research said, well, if it's that good, how about it going head to head with fish oil to see it does? And this is the first and only plant oil that's gone head to head and shown it to be just as anti-inflammatory and immune boosting as fish oil. So now we have rock solid human published studies showing that a plant oil is as good or better or more effective at inflammation, at immune boosting, at overall health, and even brain health now with the new research as fish oil. Next slide. So there's, because of the high SDA, there's a published study, human study again, 400% greater EPA conversion to flax oil. Now, EPA is rich in the bloodstream. EPA helps increase your good cholesterol and lower your LDL cholesterol. Whereas if you're consuming DHA from algae or fish, it can actually increase your LDL cholesterol. I actually had someone say, thank you for saying that. I was a vegan for 6 years. Somebody hit me online and said, I've been vegan for 6 years and I couldn't get my LDL cholesterol down. And I wasn't understanding. I'm not eating any cholesterol. He was taking algae oil, EPA DHA. And as soon as he stopped taking it, he dropped 10 points on his LDL. So it was actually the algae oil that was most likely causing his LDL to stay elevated. And we don't want elevated LDL because it's one of the greatest risk factors for cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 cause of death in the United States and globally. So I really want to help put people to rest to show that they don't need fish or algae oil. You don't need to consume animal products. As a matter of fact, you're better off getting your precursors from plants, specifically Ahiflower, but there are lots of good plants out there like hemp and nuts and seeds too as well. And next slide, I think, is questions. Yes. It's a lot of science, I know, and I packed in it, so I tried to leave a lot of room for questions. Actually, this PowerPoint presentation runs about 3 to 6 hours, so I had to really condense it down for this one. There's a lot of research that I can provide anyone. I've got over 50 studies that support all of the claims that I've made during this presentation. I'm happy to send them to anybody. If you're into reading the research or want to further discuss this, I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Geoff. That was a wonderful presentation, and people will raise their hands if they have a question, or if there's something in the chat, then I believe Gabrielle will let us know. My question is, I have a couple of questions. One is, I was taking a DHA supplement from a famous doctor. Mm-hmm. And then later I was heard that we don't even know how much DHA we're supposed to have. So, right. So I quit taking that separately. And I do have some of that adipose fat that you mentioned. I'm not sure I'm saying it right. So maybe I don't need that, but maybe you could talk about, you said how much, you mentioned some amounts that we should have. And can I just have a variety of flax seeds and chia seeds in general? And if you could speak to that a little bit, thank you.
Absolutely, great question. So the now established requirement for brain function. The brain stores more DHA than any other organ in the body. That's why if somebody calls you a fat head, you just give them a thumbs up. That means you're storing a lot of the good stuff. It's because that's where it's stored. It's stored in fat in the brain. So our brain stores more DHA than anywhere else in the body, but we now know that our body stores it in adipose tissue and in the liver too, as well as some other organs and tissues. The amount required by the brain is 2.4 milligrams to 3.8 milligrams. There is a gender difference. Women convert more ALA to DHA than men do. And this is for a proper reason, because you could carry a child. And if you can carry a child, you're going to have to feed that child and share some of your DHA with them. So women have a much higher conversion rate than men for childbearing, because a child is going to grow a brain and they're going to need some DHA to do so. So the mother is going to store more DHA than a woman will store more DHA in her body fat. And that's one of the reasons why women carry a little bit more body fat than men, is because they're storing both vitamin D and DHA for later purposes, for the potential of sharing that with an offspring. Now, the amount of stored DHA in the average adult human being is 20 to 50,000 milligrams. And if we're just using 2 to 3 milligrams in our brain, 20 to 50,000 milligrams of DHA in our stored body fat is about 20 to 30 years worth of stored fat. Is actually, the calculation comes out, even at the higher end, if I require 3.8 milligrams per day, I calculated it, and it would be 33 years before I ran out of DHA. Now, I've been vegan for 38 years, and in 38 years, I have never taken a DHA supplement or consumed DHA in its preformed state. So I've been free of DHA in any form from animals or algae or anything for 38 years. Do I look brain dysfunctional to you? Do I look dead to you? No, it's just not happening. It's because the body is efficient at converting ALA to DHA. It's just been in the tissues, and we've been looking in the wrong place the whole time.
Thank you so much. And I see Allison has a question, so I'll add her.
Hey, Geoff. Thanks so much for this presentation. I'm someone who had been sold a bill of goods about fish oil back many years ago. And of course, as a vegan, I have often wondered how we deal with that. And I live in Peru, and I consume a lot of chia and flax every day. And we also have lots of sachinchi down here. But it sounds like, from what you just responded, your answer to BJ's question, it sounds like most of us don't really need it in order to get the essential oils. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly, because this is, the theme of this weekend is the Sea of Change and how it is that we take care of the ocean. So we need to know these things that you're sharing. And so I want to be clear about that. But that's what I understood from what you were just saying to BJ. Is that correct?
100%. Now, we still need to get sources of our omega-3s from plants. It's not like we can avoid them altogether and think we're going to be okay. No, we still do need to get them. The big difference is one, they do not need to come from animals or algae. And as a matter of fact, those may actually be detrimental, because you're skipping that and not supplying the first 3 precursors. And you're also potentially, by taking preformed DHA, elevating LDL cholesterol, which would not be a good thing either. So our body knows best. The plants knows best. They supply it in the form that all herbivores should be consuming it. There is that few percent of people that do have that gene variant. So if you don't know if you have the gene variant, just to make sure that you're consuming at least hemp on occasion, so that you're bypassing that rate limiting step. And that way you should be in a good place. Yes, you still have to consume enough, but so the omega-3 index is what they call it, is based on blood draws. So everybody's going around getting these blood draws and seeing, the vegans are seeing they're low in DHA. It's because we're not putting any preformed DHA. If you preform it, put it into your digestive tract, of course it's going to show up in your bloodstream. You put it there. So it's not that we don't have it. It's that it's in a different place, and we've been measuring in the wrong place all along. Look, the same thing was happening with vitamin A. How many people think, oh, vegans don't convert enough vitamin A. Well, they were looking at the conversion of beta carotene to vitamin A in the digestive tract, and it was only about 10%. So they said that's too low to supply all the vitamin A. Well, they were wrong about that. We now know that conversion happens in the skin. Our body actually stores beta carotene in the skin to be a sun protector, to be a nice radiation protector for us, and then only converts it on an as-need basis. When you consume preformed a vitamin A, like from fish, it can actually be toxic to the liver because it's larger doses than our body needs. Again, let the plants give you the precursors. Let your body, in its inherent wisdom, convert only what it needs, where it needs it, how much it needs it for each person. Each disease state, each gender, each age group requires different amounts. And one beautiful study looked at different ratios and said, oh, wait a minute, you need a higher EPA ratio to DHA. And then another study said, no, you need higher DHA. Well, both were true. It's because they're variable. Our body is constantly juggling this. So we have an epigenetic mechanism that turns on and off these genes that produce these different enzymes and converts only when you need it, like turning on and off spigots. You don't want the spigot running all the time because the bucket would overflow. You only want it running when you need water to do something. So this is our endogenously regulated inside of our body. Our body is regulating this. And when you throw EPA and DHA in its preform starts to the body, it's like, whoa, what are you doing? I didn't make that. I don't need that now. That's way too much. I'm out of balance now. We're intentionally, out of fear of not getting enough, disrupting our body's own harmony to self-regulate all 5 of these different forms and give itself exactly what it needs, when it needs it, and where it needs it.
Okay, so I'm going to be quoting you.
Please do. Dr. Milton Mills, I don't know if you guys know Dr. Milton Mills, is a brilliant human being. He is 100% behind this, and he has actually gotten me onto the show and to talk about this too, because he's a big fan.
Good. Well, I'm going to look for your contact information, put it in the chat so we can all use you as a reference. That's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to talk about something that's so important, because I think it's holding people back from going vegan because they're hearing, oh, wait a minute. Now I'm still tackling the vitamin B12, and that one will be maybe a next one, because I found a plant that actually has bioactive B12 in 100%. So you can actually get it from a whole plant food now. We used to think that B12 didn't exist in plant foods. Now we know it exists in a lot of them, just not in very large amounts. And I found the most significant amount in a single plant food, and I'll be supplying that too. I'll be the first to market with that as well. But I want to debunk all of these myths. I want to remove the fears that people have to say, wait a minute, I heard you won't get enough DHA for your brain. I don't want to risk getting Alzheimer's, blah, yada, yada. If I go, these are all myths. And I want to really put the science out there to show people, hey, look, here's the research. It's in humans. This is absolutely showing that the plants had it right all along. Our body physiology is designed, it's hardwired design. Look, all carnivores actually don't have the first 3 steps. They don't even produce those first 3 enzymes at all. So they eat other animals, which all have EPA and DHA in them. So they get everything that they need. All herbivores all have the enzymes, produce the enzymes to convert this. Omnivores and true omnivores and carnivores don't produce those enzymes. This is another way that we know human beings are herbivores and not omnivores or carnivores, is because physiologically we have the omega-3 system that only herbivores have, just like essential amino acids. All herbivores require 9 essential amino acids. All omnivores, true omnivores, and carnivores require 10. They need taurine. Human beings do not require taurine. We make our own, just like every other herbivore on this planet. So with the essential amino acids, only herbivores can make their own taurine. We make our own taurine. We are herbivores. With essential fatty acids, only herbivores can convert ALA down to all. Carnivores and omnivores can't. We can do this. That means we are both essential fatty acid, hardwired as herbivores, and essential amino acid. Those are your two essential categories. You die without them. So for survival purposes, our physiology is 100% herbivore, not omnivore, not carnivore. That's inarguable. And I'm really hoping to get this across to more people, because so many people, including, I'm sad to say, even some vegan doctors out there, are still touting this myth that you need preformed EPA and DHA. You know, we went after algae because, oh, it's like animals, right? So you can get it as good as animals. No, animals' food's wrong to begin with. Why are we replicating what animals provide? We don't want the preformed EPA. We want the precursor, ALA. Beautiful study that said they gave people omega-3s from fish oil, and they improved their risk of cardiovascular disease. They're also eating animals, so they're causing it at the same time too. So that's not a good thing. But then they gave them ALA on top of that, and their cardiovascular scores improved even more. What is that telling us? That's telling us that ALA was more effective than EPA and DHA as a supplement for cardiovascular disease. So we now know this is true. As a matter of fact, they did a follow-up study to that, a different study, where they took and gave people EPA, which plant ALA converts to EPA readily, even in the bloodstream. So that's measurable. So the only thing they were ever concerned about was, do vegans not convert enough ALA to DHA? The EPA conversion was clear. We produce a lot of EPA, actually better than meat eaters. So they said, all right, well, what if we took the EPA, which actually ALA and EPA both reduce cardiovascular disease. But when they introduced a DHA to it, when they gave the people supplements, it negated all of the positive effects of ALA and EPA. It put people at a higher risk for heart attacks, stroke, high blood pressure, hypertension. All of that were wiped clean in diabetic patients. They did not get any benefit. That's a canceling benefit when you're consuming DHA. DHA is found in all animal products, eggs, dairy, fish, meats, and it's found in algae. I would never take a preformed DHA supplement, period. I haven't in 38 years, and I won't for the rest of my life, because it can interfere with our own body's natural functions of ALA and EPA protecting our cardiovascular health. It wiped it out. And I've got the research. I'll supply all the links to anyone. BJ, what's a good way to get people the links? Should I just supply by email to you, and then maybe you can email them up?
Fine, and I can put it on Facebook. And also, I wondered if they went to your website, other links there, but just send them to me.
Okay.
Because there were some questions in there about they want to see the research.
Yes.
They really appreciate what you're doing. So here's a question from Willow. A 65-year-old vegan takes 1,000 mcgs of vitamin B12 once a day. Is that okay?
Yeah, so I am not a practitioner and I am not a dietitian or nutritionist. My passion is trying to help people go vegan and remove through the research the doubts and fears about that. Talk to your physician or your practitioner about what the appropriate amounts are for you. Dr. Greger and nutritionfacts.org has got some great videos on what he believes is the appropriate dose for B12. I tend to agree with it. Again, I will be supplying, hopefully sometime next year, a novel plant that actually does provide 100% of all three forms of B12 that the human body uses. So we won't even have to take a supplement anymore. Yay!
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, it kind of makes sense to what our hearts are saying about not eating animals, and that we're here, that we don't have to. So it's nice to have the science to back it up. Are there any other questions? Let's see, we have something else, I think, here. Well, mostly gratefulness from Donna, thank you. And we want to say thank you so much. Any other questions? Ray, did you have a question? Okay, then I will ask you, how did you, if you haven't had algae for that long, how did you know not to? Or how did you know not to do that? You're a bodybuilder, you were interested in health, I understand, and you've been studying along all these years. Was it an inclination or something like that?
Yes. So I'm one of the rare souls that have this strong sense of intuitive awareness. And I see nature is brilliant in its mechanisms. I see how our physiology is extraordinary in its mechanisms. And I see how nature and us work so well together. If you've done any reading on the microbiome, to know that we've got 40 trillion bacteria living on us. We are an actual living planet. We have more denizens living inside of us and on us than we do around us as humans. So we are stewards of health, and we can be when we find this harmony, this synchronization of what the plant kingdom is doing for us. Basically, the plants take all of the nutrients from the soil, from the air, and use the sun to create all of the nutrition that we need. The only exception is that is a B12 from bacteria. Vitamin D3 can be got from the sun. So basically almost every other form of nutrient, vitamins, minerals, essential fats, carbohydrates, all are made by plants. So plants make all of our nutrition. They harness the sun's energy and combine it and attach it to that nutrition so that when we take it in, we can use it as energy for our own bodies. It's a beautiful symbiotic relationship. And I think we really need to get back to getting back in tune to our symbiosis. Human beings have, through science and through industry, have separated themselves from nature. We have said, I can rule over nature. I can, power over nature. I can power over. Unfortunately, the males in our society are responsible for the vast majority of this power over mentality. Power over women, power over other people with different colored skin, power over other nations. It's a power over mentality. And I'm really trying to get people to come back to nature and come back to learning the power with. When we learn the wisdom of the plants, when we learn the wisdom of our own physiology, it's brilliant. It's perfect. You can see it like a giant puzzle that fits together perfectly. And when I had my breakthrough moment, I felt like I got this huge download, when in that meditation that said, just stop harming any other creatures. It was just this open door to intuition. Let the truth be heard. And I just heard it so loudly and it filled my soul body. I dedicated the rest of my life to saying, okay, what's the way I can get this information out there in a way that people receive it? Now, it was a very spiritual experience for me. It was an otherworldly experience. And that doesn't always translate with everybody in the crowd. So I said, well, there's got to be a scientific explanation that marries with this truth that I know to be true. And when I really started searching the science, because, let's appeal to people's brains, let's show them the facts. But we didn't have the facts back in 1985. We didn't have any studies inclusive of vegans at all back in 1985. So I had to do the last 20 to 30 years of my life just combing through the data until I accumulated enough research to say, now we have all the proof. Here is everything. And I really put it together. I'm writing a book on it. It'll be out hopefully summer of next year, really going into deep explanation of it. So I hope you read it. I hope you share. I do a podcast, a live podcast discussing all of the latest research that shows that a plant-based diet is correct, that a plant-exclusive diet is correct. And I look at all the research. I simplify it. I explain the research so that anybody can see it. Listen, when you talk about physiology and nature and the plants, all of it is intuitively, as soon as you hear it, you go, well, of course, that makes total sense. And that's the way truth sounds. It sounds right. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people trying to make stuff sound right, and it's not right. But when we see that, and some people say, oh, but Geoff, you're biased because you've been vegan for 38 years. Well, of course. But if I didn't have that bias, I wouldn't be looking for it. And that's why we haven't seen it in the medical research in the last 20 to 30 years, because nobody's been looking for it. Nobody asked the questions. It wasn't there until recently, till people said, hey, wait a minute, what if you go on a plant-exclusive diet? What happens to our microbiome when that changes? We see a whole cascade of different things happening in a plant-exclusive diet, especially long-term. So I'm looking forward to being part of the research too, as they look at my body one day and say, wow, this is the changes. And that's why I chose, at 60 years of age, can have 17-inch arms and say, yes, that's 100% plant-made. Plants only in this body for almost 4 decades. There's no excuses. The nutrition is there from the plants. And I really want to set people's mind at ease that they are going to be healthy and thrive. You still have to eat right. You can't be a junk food vegan and expect to have health. You can get a heart attack just like everybody else can doing that. You still have to eat well, whole food, plant-based diet. And nutritional supplements can fill in the gaps like vitamin B12 and vitamin D, because we're all indoors and we're just not getting exposed to sun. So there's a place for supplementation. I think it's important if we're purifying our water and removing all the bacteria out of it, okay, but we're killing all the B12 bacteria as well. So now we don't have any B12 in our drinking water. We wash all our food. Well, the bacteria was in the soil, and that soil was on the food, and we would have normally eaten it. All right, we're washing it all off now, and now it's not on our food either. If we change our lifestyle due to modern conveniences, and yes, it's important to purify the water. So that was a good move. We're not dying of dysentery anymore. But we've also removed the good stuff as well as the bad stuff. Like we used to think, hey, throw antibiotics in our system to kill the bad guys. That's like throwing a grenade in a room with 2 bad guys and killing 20 good people. You killed the 2 bad guys, but you just wiped out 20 good people. Don't do that. So our approach has been wrong about so focused on killing the bad things, sometimes appropriately, but we've got to learn to put those things back and learn how to cooperate. Don't dump a bunch of antibiotics into your system and just wipe out all your good bacteria in your gut. Let's find a way that we can put back these nutrients that we've removed from all the processing and stuff like that.
Thank you so much. We have one final question, and then we'll have to close.
It's me again. Hey, Geoff. Okay, so obviously all of us here are aware that it's some of the things that you're talking about makes sense, because we were fooled into thinking that we needed to drink cow's milk. And I remember back when we used to think we needed to eat or consume cod liver oil. So that comes from the liver of the cod. Those are not whole foods, not even close, but most of us here on this line are convinced that the sources of our nutrition need to be whole food, plant-based. And so I thought maybe you could address that in our final minute in terms of your supplements. Are they whole food? They're obviously plant-based. So I was wondering about that.
Yes. So again, the reason I focused on supplementation is to try to fill in the gaps of where we have removed some of our nutrition from our food. We do what we call monocropping, where we grow one type of food in a soil over and over and again to the point where it robs nutrients out of the soil and depletes them, so that the food that we're eating, we see a nice, beautiful red apple or a nice head of green lettuce, and it's nutrient devoid. Well, so we're thinking we're eating whole food, plant-based, and we're getting all the nutrition. It may not be the case. Yes, there are better forms. Great study out of Rutgers showed that there was up to 5,000% higher nutrient value in biodynamically grown organic foods, veganic foods, than there were in even organic foods, or especially commercially grown foods. So even though that orange may look bright and beautiful orange in the grocery store, it may not have 1/10 of the nutrition. Remember, these farmers are breeding things for bright color, high sugar content. Both of those are no bueno for the human beings, and they're robbing it of its imbalanced of polyphenols. When you look at wild blueberries compared to commercial blueberries, a wild blueberry is tiny, where commercial blueberry is huge. It's full of water. That means it has less nutrient value. A wild blueberry will have about 50 times the antioxidant power of a commercial blueberry. 50 times. That's how far we've come from the food that we think we're eating is healthy. It's not as healthy as we think it is oftentimes. And I think there's an important place. And look, it doesn't serve any of us if we think we're being healthy and are not checking our nutrients and levels and stuff like that, or replacing them through supplementation, or topping them off at least. If we end up being sick or disabled or have a disease state, that's not a good representation for our movement. And we need to make sure that we're getting the nutrition that we really need for our body so that we can exhibit amazing health and be shining examples for this movement to make people go, wow, I want what you've got, you know? The better nutritional quality we can get with both our food and, when necessary, supplementation, the better examples we can be for this movement. And that's what I'm trying to do. Like with protein, I sell branched chain amino acids. There are 3 of the amino acids that are lower in plant proteins. Well, a lot of people will assume that they switch from an animal-based diet, which is high in branched chain amino acids, to a plant-based diet, and they'll eat the same basic caloric. It's lower though. They don't know that they have to eat a little bit more of the protein. So instead of eating more, they can just add the specific amino acids back to their food and not have to eat more and not have to go into calorie surplus. So I think there are some appropriate times, especially if you're trying to become more physically fit or add muscle or strength to you, like people who are older who need to do that. Great studies on leucine for protecting against sarcopenia. Now, I'm 60 years of age. I just came from the gym and was doing 450 pounds at 60 years of age. And I can do that because I am optimizing my nutrition. I can maintain this level where most guys my age are losing muscle because I optimize my nutrition. Why? Because I want to show people, especially most of the guys out there that say, hey, you can't build muscle on a plant-based diet. I'm 60, I'm 40 years vegan almost, and I'm pushing 450 pounds. That's what optimal nutrition could do. And that, I even had a guy in the gym just come up to me today and say, hey, God, you're pushing more weight than anybody else in this gym. You know, how can you do it at your age? I see you got gray hair. And it's nutrition. So the plants can get you a good portion of the way there. And I think there is room for supplementation for the right people, for the right goals, and to make sure that you're getting the optimal amount of nutrition so we can be the best example.
Thank you for that, Geoff. Mm-hmm.
This has been marvelous, and we appreciate your passion, your knowledge, and your experience, and then your willingness to share it with us. So thank you so much for being here today, Geoff.
Thank you for having me.